If you're into true crime, chances are you've heard of this case before. It's the one that left Japan shaken, the one that horrified the world, a case that exposed how broken a justice system can really be. For 44 days, a 17-year-old girl was held captive, beaten, starved, begging every single day to go home. And no one came. This is the Junko Furuta case, also known as the concrete murder, also remembered simply as 44 days of hell. But here's what most people don't talk about. What happened to the boys who did this? What happened to the 4 teenagers who walked free while she never got the chance to turn 18? Let's get into it.
Before we get into it, content warning. This case involves extreme violence, torture, and assault against a minor. We'll get to the crime. But I need you to understand something about Japan in 1988 because it matters. It changes how you see everything. Japan is in the middle of what economists literally call the bubble economy. The stock market is through the roof. Real estate prices are insane. Tokyo is arguably the most expensive city on the planet. There's this energy in the air, right? Like the whole country is on this high. People are spending money like there's no tomorrow. Designer everything, luxury cars, neon lights. If you've ever seen those aesthetic videos of 1980s Tokyo, with the city pop music playing in the background, that's the vibe. Everything looks perfect. And here's the thing about societies that look perfect on the outside. They become really, really good at ignoring the ugly stuff. Because acknowledging that something dark is happening means admitting that the perfection is fake. And nobody wants to do that. Not the government, not the police, not the neighbors, not the parents, nobody. Japan has always had this reputation of being one of the safest countries in the world, and statistically it is. You can leave your bag on a train in Tokyo, and someone will probably chase you down to return it. You can walk home alone at 2 a.m. and feel completely safe. Crime rates are genuinely low, and I'm not saying any of that is a lie, it's real. But the flip side of building an entire national identity around safety and order is that when something truly horrific does happen, the instinct isn't to confront it. The instinct is to pretend it doesn't exist. Because if we acknowledge it, what does that say about us? Keep that in your head, we're going to come back to it. November 1988, Misato, Saitama Prefecture. It's getting cold. The kind of cold where your fingers sting when you grip bicycle handlebars and your breath makes these little clouds in front of your face. And there's a girl riding her bike home from work. Her name is Junko Furuta, and I need you to know her. Not as a case file, not as a Wikipedia summary, not as a list of injuries that people screenshot and share on Reddit with the caption, "The worst crime in human history." I need you to know her as the girl she actually was. Junko was 17. She was in her final year of high school, Yashio Minami High School in Saitama. She had just started a new part-time job at a factory that manufactured plastic molds. Not glamorous, not exciting, but she was proud of it because she earned her own money, and that mattered to her. She was the kind of girl who valued independence. She didn't want to rely on anyone. She wanted to figure things out herself. Her friends would later describe her as warm. Not the loudest person in the room, not the life of the party, but the kind of friend that when you needed someone, she was just there, quietly, consistently. One friend said, and this is the detail that absolutely wrecks me every time I read it, that Junko would walk her friends home at night, even if it meant she had to walk an extra 20 minutes in the dark by herself. She would rather be the one alone in the dark than let someone else be scared. Think about that. Think about the kind of person who does that at 17. Who puts someone else's safety above their own without even thinking about it. That's who she was. She had an older brother and 2 younger brothers. Her parents were normal, loving, working-class people. They weren't neglectful. They weren't absent. They were just a regular family trying to get by. And Junko fit into that family like a puzzle piece. She helped around the house. She was responsible. She was the kind of daughter that parents brag about to their coworkers. And she had this thing where, okay, this is going to sound small, but that's why it matters. She had recently gotten really into thinking about her future. What she wanted to do after high school. Maybe work full-time, maybe study more. She hadn't decided yet, and she didn't feel pressure to decide because she was 17 and she thought she had time. She thought she had so much time. November 25th, 1988. Evening. Junko finishes her shift at the factory and gets on her bicycle. She's riding down a quiet residential street. It's dark, it's cold. She's probably thinking about dinner or homework or whatever 17-year-olds think about on a Tuesday night. And out of nowhere, with zero warning, a boy appears and kicks her off her bicycle. Just like that, she's on the ground. His name was Miyano Joe. He was 18, and this was not random. See, this is important. A lot of people tell this story like it was a random crime of opportunity. It wasn't. Miyano had seen Junko before. He had shown interest in her, and she had rejected him. She said no, and that no, that completely normal, completely appropriate, completely justified no is what set this entire thing in motion. But Miyano didn't do this alone, and this is where the story splits open. Right after she's knocked off her bike, another boy appears. He acts like a random passerby, like he just happened to be walking by and saw this girl get knocked over. He's concerned, he's helpful. He says something like, "Hey, are you okay?" That guy looked dangerous. "Let me walk you home, this area isn't safe." And Junko, shaking, hurt, scared, she trusts him, because why wouldn't she? He seems kind, he seems normal, he's not threatening. He walks her directly to Miyano. And from that moment, from that exact second, Junko Furuta was never free again. I want to pause here for a second because this tactic, this specific method of kidnapping someone, it's something that needs to be talked about more, the predator and the savior. One person creates the danger, another person appears as the rescue, and the victim, because they're scared and looking for safety, walks right into the trap. This is not unique to this case. This happens everywhere. It happens in parking lots. It happens on college campuses. It happens at bars. One person bumps into you and spills your drink, and another person offers to buy you a new one. It's calculated. It's rehearsed. And it works because human beings are wired to trust people who help us in moments of vulnerability. Okay, so they take her. They bring her to a house in Adachi, Tokyo. And I need you to understand what this house is because it's going to fundamentally change how you process this case. This isn't some abandoned warehouse on the outskirts of town. This isn't some basement that nobody knows about. This is the Minato family home, a regular residential house in a regular neighborhood with regular neighbors. Minato Nobuharu, one of the 4 boys, this is his house. His parents live here. His parents are home. I'm going to say it again because my brain rejected it the first 3 times I read it. His parents were home. They were in the house while a 17-year-old girl was being held captive under their roof, and they did nothing. They would later say, in their defense, if you can even call it that they were afraid of their own son, that he had connections to low-level Yakuza members, and they feared what would happen to them if they intervened or called the police. So let me get this straight. 2 grown adults, parents, knew that a teenager was being brutalized in their own home, and they chose to protect themselves instead of her. They went to sleep every night, ate breakfast every morning, watched TV in the living room, while a few rooms away their son and his friends were destroying a girl's life hour by hour. And it wasn't just the parents. This is the part that I think breaks the case wide open psychologically. Over the course of 44 days, it's estimated that up to 100 people became aware, to varying degrees, that something was happening to Junko in that house. The boys' friends came over. Some of them participated in the abuse. Others saw her, beaten, swollen, barely recognizable as human. And they just left. They walked out. They went home. They ate dinner with their families. They went to school the next morning, and they said nothing. Not one person picked up a phone. Not one. In the first few days, the boys forced Junko to call her own parents. They stood over her. I want you to picture this. They stood over her and coached her, word by word, on what to say. She had to call her mother and tell her that she was fine, that she had run away from home, that she was staying with friends, that she didn't want them to come looking for her. Her mother believed her. Her father believed her. And this is where I refuse to let anyone blame the parents. Because they didn't believe a lie. They believed their daughter. They trusted her. They had no reason not to. She sounded calm because she was being forced to sound calm with a threat hovering over her head. And meanwhile, Junko's parents filed a missing persons report. They went to the police. And the police did what police in 1988 Japan did when a teenage girl went quote-unquote missing. They assumed she was a runaway. Case closed. No urgency. No investigation. No follow-up. Because runaways happen all the time, right? She's probably at a boyfriend's house. She'll come back when she's ready. She was 5 miles away, dying. Now I'm going to tell you what happened to Junko over those 44 days. And I need to be very careful here, because I want you to understand the severity without turning her pain into entertainment. Some of the details from the court documents are so extreme that when the prosecutors read them during the trial, multiple people in the courtroom had to leave. A judge who had been on the bench for decades reportedly said this was the worst case he had ever encountered in his entire career. The 4 primary perpetrators were Miyano Joe, age 18, the ringleader; Ogura Yasushi, 17; Minato Nobuharu, 16, whose parents owned the house; and Watanabe Yasushi, 17. And then there were the others, the rotating cast of boys who showed up, participated, and left. We don't know all their names. Some of them have never been identified. The abuse started with assault, physical and sexual, every single day, multiple times a day. They used her as a punching bag, literally. When they'd get frustrated playing video games or mahjong, they'd go into the room where Junko was kept and beat her, like she was a stress ball. Like hitting her was just something to do between rounds. They burned her with cigarettes, dozens of burns across her arms, legs, and face. They dripped hot wax on her eyelids. They inserted foreign objects. They forced her to eat cockroaches and drink her own urine when they didn't feel like giving her water. They used iron barbells, glass bottles, and lit fireworks against her skin. By the second week, she couldn't walk properly. By the third week, her face was so swollen that she was nearly unrecognizable. There were infections spreading across her body that were never treated. She developed what medical examiners would later describe as severe malnutrition, sepsis, and internal hemorrhaging across almost every organ. And the boys? They went to school during the day. They came home in the evening. They did homework. They watched TV. They ate dinner that Minato's mother cooked. And then they went into that room, like it was routine, like she was a chore. Around day 30, something happened that tells you everything about who Junko was even after 30 days of hell. She tried to escape. She somehow crawled, because she couldn't walk, to a phone in the house. She picked it up. She dialed 110, which is the Japanese equivalent of 911. The call was connecting. She was seconds away from rescue, and one of the boys caught her. The punishment for that attempt was so brutal that she never tried again. Whatever fight was left in her after 30 days of torture, it was extinguished in that moment. And I don't say that to diminish her. I say that because I want you to understand what they took from her. They didn't just take her body, they took her hope. Piece by piece, day by day, they broke down every part of her that said maybe I can survive this until there was nothing left. January 4th, 1989. Day 44. Miyano loses a game of mahjong. He's angry. He goes into the room where Junko is lying on the floor. She's been lying on the floor for days because she physically cannot sit up anymore, and he beats her for what witnesses would later estimate was about 2 hours. He uses an iron barbell. He kicks her. He burns her legs with lighter fluid and sets them on fire. He drips melted plastic onto her face, and then she dies. Right there on that floor. She was 17 years old and her body just could not take one more second. Now think about what the boys do next, because this is the part that tells you who they really are. Not in a moment of rage, not in the heat of violence, but afterwards, in the quiet, when they have to figure out what to do with the body of a teenage girl in their friend's house. They get a 55-gallon steel drum. They put her body inside. They mix wet concrete and they pour it in. They let it harden, and then they dump the barrel in an empty lot in Koto, Tokyo. Like garbage. She wasn't found because nobody was looking in the right place. The police had written her off as a runaway. Her parents were searching. God, they were searching, but they had no leads. Nobody would talk to them, and the boys just went on with their lives. They went to school. They hung out with friends. They acted like nothing happened. Junko's body was only discovered because one of the boys, Miyano, got arrested for a completely separate crime. He assaulted another woman. During that interrogation, he started bragging. He told the investigators about Junko, about what they did, about the barrel. And even the investigators didn't believe him at first, because what he was describing sounded impossible. Nobody does that to another person for 44 days. Nobody just goes about their daily life while a girl is dying in the next room. But when they dug up that barrel and broke through the concrete, everything Miyano said was confirmed. Every injury, every burn, every break. The forensic report was so extensive and so horrifying that parts of it were sealed from the public. And here's where it gets worse. I know you're thinking, how could it possibly get worse? But it does, because of the sentencing. Under Japan's juvenile protection law, all 4 primary perpetrators were tried as minors. Their identities were sealed, and their sentences, I need you to sit down for this. Miyano Joe, the ringleader, received 17 years. Not life, not the death penalty, 17 years. He has been released. Ogura received 8 years. Then after release, he assaulted another person and went back to prison. He reportedly bragged about the Junko case to his friends. He's been released again. Minato, whose house it happened in, whose parents were home, received 4 to 6 years. He has been released. He was later arrested again for attempted murder of a different person. Watanabe received 3 to 4 years. He has been released. To put this in perspective, that might make you want to throw your phone across the room. Junko was tortured for 44 days. The shortest sentence was roughly 25 days of prison time per day of her torture. The longest was about 141 days per day of her torture, and none of them showed genuine remorse in court. Miyano reportedly laughed during parts of the testimony. Ogura's mother, when approached by Junko's grieving parents, allegedly told them that it was Junko's fault for being in the wrong place at the wrong time, and that they should sue Junko's family for ruining her son's future. I just need you to sit with that for a second. A mother, looking at the parents of a murdered child, and blaming the child. The public backlash in Japan was massive. There were protests, petitions, media coverage that ran for months. People were enraged. They demanded reform. They demanded harsher juvenile sentencing laws. And to Japan's credit, changes did come. In the year 2000, they amended the juvenile law to allow minors to be tried as adults in serious cases. They lowered the minimum age for criminal prosecution. But for Junko, it was too late. The sentences had been served, the boys had been released, and she was still in that concrete. And this is where I want to talk about the thing that I think makes this case fundamentally different from almost any other case I've ever covered. Because yes, the violence is extreme. Yes, the sentencing is outrageous. But the thing that haunts me, the thing that I think should haunt all of us, is the silence. Over 44 days, dozens of people knew. Parents knew. Friends knew. Classmates knew. Some of them saw Junko with their own eyes, and every single one of them made a choice. They chose to walk out of that house and say nothing. They chose their own comfort over a girl's life. And before anyone says, oh, that's Japan, that's their culture, we would never, let's not do that, because we know that's not true. Bystander effect exists everywhere. We've seen it in cases in the United States, in the UK, in every country. People hear screaming through apartment walls and turn up their TV. People see something wrong and tell themselves it's not my business. It happens here. It happens there. It happens everywhere. The difference with this case is just the scale. 44 days, dozens of people, and a girl who walked her friends home. So they wouldn't have to be alone in the dark. But when she needed someone, anyone, to walk her out of that house, nobody came. Junko's grave is in Tokyo. People still visit. They leave flowers. They leave letters to a girl they never met. And reportedly, the grave has been vandalized more than once, likely by people connected to the perpetrators. Because even after death, even sealed in concrete, even reduced to a case number, they still wouldn't leave her alone. I think about her parents a lot when I research this case. Her mother, by all accounts, never fully recovered. There are reports of severe mental health struggles that continued for years after Junko's death. Her father gave a few interviews over the years and said something that just stays with me. He said that every night he thinks about the phone call, the one where Junko told them she was fine, and he replays it in his head, her voice, the way she sounded, and he wonders if there was something he missed. Some hesitation in her voice, some word that didn't sound right, some clue that he should have caught, and there probably was. But he trusted his daughter, because that's what parents do. She called them from that house and told them she was okay, and they believed her. And they have to live with that for the rest of their lives. Not because they did anything wrong, but because the boys forced Junko to lie to the people who loved her most. That might be the cruelest part of all of it. There are still conversations happening in Japan about this case. Every few years, it resurfaces. The boys' identities have been leaked online multiple times, despite the protection order. Weekly magazines in Japan published their names and photos. The internet has made it impossible for them to stay truly anonymous, and a lot of Japanese citizens believe that's exactly how it should be. Because here's the fundamental question that this case asks, and I don't think there's a clean answer. At what point does the right to rehabilitation become an insult to the victim? At what point does protecting a criminal's future mean erasing a victim's past? Because Junko Furuta will never have anonymity. Her name is forever attached to the worst 44 days that the Japanese criminal justice system has ever documented. Everyone knows what happened to her. Every detail, every injury. Her suffering is public property, but the boys who caused that suffering, they get to disappear. That math doesn't work for me. Junko Furuta loved to ride her bicycle. She was saving money from her part-time job. She walked her friends home in the dark so they wouldn't be afraid. She was 17 years old. She had plans. She had time. She had an entire life waiting for her on the other side of that cold November evening. And four boys who are now free men with new names and new lives and legal protection and second chances, they took all of it. And the concrete lasted longer than the consequences. What do you think about this case? Because I think the conversation about bystander responsibility and juvenile sentencing isn't over. I don't think it'll ever be over. Not as long as cases like this exist. Stay safe, and I'll see you in the next one.